My stepmother kicked me out at 18, 2 days after my father died. The next day, a bunch of SUVs showed up in front of her house. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe and also drop a comment below. What's one life lesson you think everyone should learn before it's too late? Share your thoughts. Thanks. My mom died when I was 10, and honestly, my dad tried his best after that. He really did. He'd make chocolate chip pancakes every Sunday morning, slip encouraging notes into my backpack, and I'd catch him crying in the garage when he thought I wasn't looking. Dad was shattered by losing Mom, but he was still my dad, you know. That's when Linda entered our lives. I was 14 when she showed up at our front door with her bright red lipstick and those fake smiles that never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. Dad thought she was this amazing, caring woman. And to be fair, she put on quite the performance for him. But I saw right through her act. Her kindness always came with strings attached. And somehow I never qualified for any of it. Still, I tried to be supportive. Dad deserved happiness after everything he'd been through with Mom's cancer battle. He'd earned the right to smile again. When Dad collapsed from that massive heart attack 5 years later, it felt like my entire world crumbled in an instant. No warning signs, no chance to say goodbye, just gone. I was 19, fresh out of high school, still figuring out basic adult stuff like scheduling my own doctor appointments. And suddenly I was completely alone. I hadn't even had time to process my birthday the week before because we were planning Dad's funeral instead. The funeral service hadn't even ended when Linda started treating me like an unwelcome house guest in my own childhood home. She moved through the house like she owned every inch of it, tossing Dad's Sports Illustrated magazines and replacing our family photos with her personal collection. I caught her one afternoon literally scrubbing Dad's name off our mailbox with steel wool. When she noticed me watching from the window, she didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. She just rinsed the brush in her bucket of soapy water and kept going. "Molly," she said, her voice sharp as broken glass, "you're not really family anymore, are you? Time to find your own place." I didn't argue with her. What would have been the point? So I packed everything I owned into 2 duffel bags, a few pairs of jeans, some t-shirts, my beat-up Converse sneakers, toiletries, and my acoustic guitar, the one Dad bought me for my 16th birthday. As I walked past the coat closet, I saw Dad's old Yankees jacket still hanging there, and I couldn't bring myself to touch it, not yet. That night, I crashed on my best friend Sarah's couch in her apartment near downtown Denver. "Of course you can stay here, Molly," Sarah said without hesitation. "Mi casa es su casa, right?" She left me a fuzzy blanket and a bottle of water on the coffee table. We didn't need to talk about it. She understood what I was going through. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, my hands pressed against my chest to keep myself from falling apart completely. The grief wasn't loud or dramatic. It was heavy, like carrying concrete blocks in my rib cage. But before I closed my eyes, I made one phone call to Dad's older sister, Aunt Rebecca. She answered on the second ring and made all the right shocked sounds as I told her everything. I can't remember exactly what I said. I was pretty much word vomiting through tears, but I remember the long silence on her end afterward. It was the kind of silence that wraps around you when someone is really listening, not just waiting for their turn to talk. Finally, she spoke up. "I'll handle this, sweetheart," she said firmly. "Are you safe at Sarah's, or do I need to come get you tonight?" "I'm okay here," I managed. "But Aunt Rebecca, I need help. I don't know what to do." "Don't worry, Molly. Go back to the house tomorrow morning to get the rest of your things. I'll meet you there." I had no idea what she meant by that, but something in her tone made me feel like maybe, just maybe, everything wasn't completely hopeless. The next morning, I drove my beat-up Honda Civic back to the house where I'd lived since birth. The one with the wobbly front porch steps and the crooked birdhouse Dad and I had built together when I was 12. I remembered getting bright blue paint all over both of us that day. But when I pulled into the driveway, something was very, very different. 5 black Cadillac Escalades sat parked along the curb like we were filming some kind of FBI raid. 2 men in dark suits stood by our front door. One kept checking his Apple Watch. The other stood so still I had to watch for him to blink just to make sure he was actually human. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Had Linda called some kind of security company to keep me out of my own house? I got out of my car, shoulders tense, and rang the doorbell like I was visiting strangers. The door swung open and there was Linda, looking pale as a ghost and about as steady as a house of cards in a windstorm. "Oh, Molly, you're here," she said, her voice suddenly dripping with fake sweetness. "I was just about to call you, honey." "Honey?" I almost laughed out loud. "What's going on here?" I asked. "I just came to grab the rest of my stuff." Before Linda could answer, Aunt Rebecca appeared in the doorway behind her, wearing power heels that clicked across the hardwood floor and a charcoal business suit that probably cost more than my car. She was carrying a thick manila folder. "Perfect timing," Aunt Rebecca said with a smile that could cut diamonds. "Come on in, both of you. My legal team is already set up in the living room." "Right, Linda." I followed them inside, completely confused, while Linda trailed behind us, looking like she wanted to either scream or throw up. Maybe both. In the living room, 2 lawyers sat at our dining table. One older guy, calm as anything, reading from a stack of official-looking papers. The other one, younger, flipping through legal documents like he'd done this 1,000 times before. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Linda snapped, pacing back and forth. "You can't just barge in here." Aunt Rebecca held up one hand. "Sit down," she commanded. "Stop talking, Linda. Let's not make this more complicated than it needs to be." Linda sat, barely. I hovered near the doorway, anxious and confused, trying to make sense of this room full of suits and tension. "What is this? What's happening?" I asked quietly. Aunt Rebecca turned to me, her expression softening like she was looking at a scared kid instead of a 19-year-old. "Your father never put Linda on the deed, sweetheart. He placed this house and all the property into a trust, in your name, Molly." Aunt Rebecca continued. "He just didn't want Linda to know about it, but he never got the chance to explain it to you because—" Her voice caught slightly. "Because he wasn't supposed to leave us so suddenly." "You mean the house is actually mine?" I whispered. I remembered my 18th birthday party last year. Dad had looked at me with such pride when I told him I was taking a gap year to figure things out. He'd smiled and said he understood that I should take my time. I had no idea he was planning for my future, a future he somehow knew might not include him. Aunt Rebecca had only remembered the trust when Linda started making moves, and she knew she had to act fast. "That's impossible," Linda said with a harsh laugh. "Michael would never do something like that without telling me." One of the lawyers slid a folder across the table toward her. "This is a certified copy of the trust documentation, ma'am," he said calmly. "You were allowed to live here temporarily under the terms of the trust, but now that the beneficiary has come of age and requested your removal, you no longer have any legal right to remain on the property." "You can't just kick me out," Linda sputtered. "You have exactly 1 hour to collect your personal belongings," the younger lawyer added. "After that, anything left behind will be considered abandoned property." I felt like I couldn't breathe. The air in the room was thick and electric with tension. The house where I'd learned to ride a bike, where Dad taught me to make his famous barbecue ribs, where I'd cried over my first heartbreak. It was mine. "This isn't over," Linda said, standing up and shaking. One of the lawyers handed her a checklist. Personal clothing and toiletries only, nothing else. A man in a black suit moved to stand by the staircase, arms crossed, watching everything. "Who are all these people and why are there 5 Escalades outside?" I whispered to Aunt Rebecca. She barely looked up from her paperwork. "Private security," she said matter-of-factly. "My business partner owns the company." I didn't trust Linda to leave quietly. "Smart move," I said quietly. I didn't expect Linda to go quietly either. Linda stomped upstairs, muttering under her breath like an angry teenager. "Clock's ticking?" Aunt Rebecca called after her. Linda took 53 minutes to come back downstairs, dragging 2 oversized suitcases behind her like they weighed 1,000 pounds each. Her face was red and blotchy, her mouth pressed into a tight line, but her eyes were crystal clear. No tears. She had any right to cry. She paused at the front door like she had something important to say. Maybe an apology. Maybe some final insult to make herself feel better about the whole situation. But she didn't say anything. She just shook her head, looked down, and walked out into the bright Colorado sunshine like a ghost. One of the black Escalades followed her slowly down Maple Street until she disappeared around the corner. I stood in the doorway watching her go, then walked straight into the kitchen where Dad used to make his weekend omelets. Aunt Rebecca moved quietly around the kitchen, pouring 2 glasses of iced tea. She handed me one without saying a word, and we sat down at the same table where I used to do my math homework while Dad stirred chili on the stove or tried to recreate Mom's famous enchilada recipe. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Aunt Rebecca asked. I nodded, but honestly it felt more like muscle memory than truth. "I think so," I said. We sat in the comfortable quiet. The refrigerator hummed softly. Outside, a cardinal called out and got an answer from somewhere down the street. "You know, I really miss your mom, Molly," she said suddenly. "Especially her apple cinnamon bread. I've been craving it for months. I'm terrible at baking, but I think we should try to make some." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "We can definitely do that." Dad kept all of Mom's recipes in that old wooden box by the coffee maker. We found Mom's recipe collection and started baking. "I always disliked her," Aunt Rebecca said out of nowhere. "I know that sounds harsh, Molly, but it's the truth. Linda just... something about her never sat right with me from day one. She tried to rearrange my kitchen the first time she came to Thanksgiving dinner. But your dad, I guess he saw something in her that we didn't. Or maybe he didn't want to see what we saw." I mixed the cinnamon into the batter and nodded slowly. "I get that," I said. "Why didn't Dad tell me about the trust?" "Because he knew Linda would try to manipulate the situation if she found out. And honestly, darling, I think your father believed he had more time with you." Aunt Rebecca continued, measuring out flour. His heart attack came out of nowhere and robbed him of that conversation. He trusted me to protect what was already yours when the time came. I nodded, feeling the weight of understanding settle over me. I should have stepped in the moment Linda started her nonsense after the funeral. But I was grieving too, sweetie. I froze when I should have acted. "Thank you," I whispered, chopping walnuts for the bread. "You saved me. You saved my home." Aunt Rebecca reached over and squeezed my hand. "You were never going to stay down for long, Molly. You were named after your great-grandmother, Margaret. You're the great-granddaughter of the woman who built her own house during the Depression and never took garbage from anybody." After we slid the bread into the oven, we waited on the back porch, breathing in the scent of Mom's recipe filling the house again. It wasn't quite as perfect as Mom used to make, but it gave us the comfort we desperately needed. That night, I slept in my old bedroom for the first time in days. I didn't unpack everything right away. The walls still had tiny holes from posters I'd taken down years ago, and the corners smelled faintly of vanilla candles and old books. I opened my closet, half expecting it to be empty. But there it was, a plastic storage box of childhood memories that Dad had never let Linda throw away. I wandered through the house barefoot, every creaky floorboard welcoming me home like an old friend. In the hallway, I ran my fingers along the light switch his dad had labeled in his messy handwriting. Front porch, kitchen, living room. In his bedroom. Just his bedroom now. I hesitated at the doorway. The door opened quietly as I stepped inside. His closet was still full. Flannel shirts, worn hoodies, and the denim jacket he wore every autumn. I pressed my face into it without thinking. It still smelled like his cologne. Like coffee, like Saturday mornings when he'd hum while making breakfast. I didn't cry. I just stood there breathing him in. Later, I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor with my guitar across my lap. The song I'd been writing since the funeral came back to me slowly, like muscle memory. It wasn't perfect, neither was I. But the silence in the house felt different now. 3 months later, I'm sitting on the front porch steps Dad and I never got around to fixing, drinking coffee from his favorite Denver Broncos mug, watching the sunrise paint our street golden. The house feels like home again. I kept most of Dad's things exactly where he left them. His reading glasses on the kitchen counter, his coffee-stained copy of the Denver Post still folded by his chair, even his lucky fishing hat hanging by the back door. Not because I'm stuck in the past, but because these little pieces of him make the house feel warm instead of empty. I ended up not taking that gap year after all. Turns out inheriting a house at 19 comes with responsibilities I never considered. Property taxes, utility bills, maintenance costs. So, I enrolled at Colorado State University for the spring semester, majoring in business administration. Dad would have gotten a kick out of that, considering he always said I had a good head for numbers. I'm working part-time at a local coffee shop downtown, and between my job and financial aid, I'm managing to keep everything afloat. It's not easy, but it's mine, and that makes all the difference. Aunt Rebecca comes by every Sunday for what we call recipe adventures. Basically us attempting to recreate Mom's cooking with varying degrees of success. Last week we tried her famous green chili mac and cheese. It was, well, let's just say we ordered pizza afterward. I heard through my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, that Linda moved to Phoenix to live with her sister. Apparently, she tried to contest the trust, but her lawyer told her she didn't have a case. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks about Dad or if she just saw him as a means to an end. I don't hate her anymore. Honestly, I mostly feel sorry for her. She had a chance to be part of something real, and she chose to see me as competition instead of family. Sarah still comes over every Friday for movie nights. We make popcorn and watch old comedies, and sometimes we talk about Dad, sometimes we don't. That's the thing about grief. It doesn't follow a schedule or rule book. Some days hit harder than others, but the good days are starting to outnumber the difficult ones. Yesterday, I finally took Dad's Yankees jacket out of the closet and wore it to the grocery store. It smells like him, and fits me perfectly. I think he would have liked that. The house isn't just a place I inherited anymore. It's home, my home, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.